Good evening. I'd like to call the October meeting of the Park and Recreation Advisory Committee to order. And we'll start with introductions on the right.
Bob Burns.
Chris Cook.
Doug Neely.
Sean Datchler.
Joyce Gifford.
Roger Fowler-Tice.
Bill Lewis. And the first thing on the agenda is the approval of minutes from last month. I was not here, but I trust everybody else has read them, and I haven't heard any corrections.
I wasn't here, so I can't make a motion.
Okay.
I will go ahead and make the motion. Move to approve the minutes of September 22nd, 2016.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing no no's, the motion passes. Okay. Is there any citizen comments not on the agenda tonight? Okay. Next thing is the Vietnam Memorial Wall project. It was supposed to be a presentation from Evan Cannell, and he called me and wanted to move it out a month. They're kind of at the stage now where it's putting the final touches on what the wall's going to be, what the material they're going to use, and the exact placement. And he hopes to have a lot more detailed information for our next meeting, and so we pushed that back. And that's not to be confused with the Larry Dahl Memorial. They're two separate items. So, and the next is the Girl Scout Troop 45064. Come on up, please. Welcome. Welcome back.
Stella, you want to say your name?
I'm Stella.
And I'm Karen Burig. We're both from Troop 45064. I want to thank you all for having us. Many familiar faces. One of the things that we're trying to do right now is get the word out about an event the girls are planning. It's a follow-up event to that last March. They planned and hosted the Party in the Park to get people's awareness about La Tourette Park. And so they worked to get a community enhancement grant so they could spend more time trying to get the neighbors kind of engaged in this conversation. So I know that the troop is going to different meetings. So earlier this week we went to the Parks Foundation meeting. So we saw some of you there. But we were also wanted to talk with you directly about this particular event. Let's see. So Stella's passing out the flyer that we have for the event. It's planned for November 11th through the 13th. It's a weekend, and it's a weekend of activities. And we'll go over a little later what those activities are, kind of in detail. I did mention we received the funds from the Community Enhancement Program to be able to do this. And so the kind of the big thing that those funds are using is to work with this group called City Repair. And they specifically work with neighborhood organizations to facilitate community engagement and work with neighbors to both kind of build their kind of resources, and they also have worked specifically on parks projects. So the girls have been working really hard on their match part because those community enhancement grants aren't just money that they give to you, but they also require a match. So they have a lot of work that they've been doing. So Stella's going to talk about that.
A few of our girls we have been going to some meetings, and we have been reaching out to the neighbors. We have been canvassing around the neighborhood to get the neighbors excited and ready to go to this planning for the park. We have been working with the city pool because it's going to be in the city, the pool community room. So we want to know more details about what we can have. We have been organizing what food's going to be there and how we're going to get food enough for everyone who's going to be there.
So one of the things I just wanted to call out is on the back side of the flyer is the agenda of events that people can participate in. People can come for one session, or they can come for one day, or they can come for the whole weekend. The Friday night event is really about building community. It's about working, getting to know your neighbors, really focusing on that idea that it takes a village to make things happen, and everybody brings something to the table on how we as community members can work to make something happen. The second day is to talk about really what we want to get out of this project, and focusing on both a park repair game, as well as this group does there's an intersection repair. But one of the big things this group does is work with neighborhoods to make the street space a place that people want to be, and they paint intersections so that it creates a sense of place, or they get their neighbors to paint the intersection and be involved in their neighborhood, and it creates a sense of place, and it gets people to slow down, and there are eyes on the street and whatnot. So that's what I believe the intersection repair game's about, but there's also the park repair game. So on Sunday, we kind of come back again, and we sort of talk about what we've learned. The village building convergence model talks about that. Really, this organization hosts yearly the opportunity for neighbors to actually build the projects that they want to see happen. And it's called a Village Building Convergence. And so they have activities going on all over Portland, building community gardens and doing intersection repair or cob structures or whatever it is. But it's people out there working together. So they'll be talking about that. We're really working towards getting to an implementation plan. And that implementation plan isn't just about, oh, hey, city, you do this, but it's about figuring out how we as individuals can make this happen. And so what are those pieces to make this park something that we've talked about and we want it to be? So it's a lot of stuff for a weekend, but we really hope that we can get to a place where we can come back to you and say, hey, look at these great ideas, and we want to go out and pursue a piece of it, right? Or we want to see if we can work with the city on getting a bigger piece or whatnot. But I think one of the things that I sensed over the past year is that we really, in order for something to be done at La Tourette Park, we just need to have some direction, right?
Yes.
So you want to?
We have a few questions to ask. The first one is, how do you want to be involved in this?
Joyce?
I want to say I really wish this meeting was on a different weekend, because that is a holiday weekend that some of us are going to be out of town, and I'm trying to see if I can rearrange my schedule to attend part of what this is, because I'd love to see what's happening. I don't know if you've considered having these sessions recorded, so that those of us who can't make that would be able to at least see some of the interactions that did happen. I know that you guys are going to be taking good notes so that you can bring back all the ideas. So if it's not recorded, at least I'm looking forward to seeing those notes.
Our second question was, do you have any ideas on how we can make this a successful event?
Well, I think the number one is you guys have done a great job already, was get it out to the neighborhood. I think everybody was positively surprised at the turnout last time.
Yeah, very rainy. I was wondering if that was the reason that we're having it at the pool community room to avoid the kind of weather. But that was an amazing turnout for the weather you had.
Yeah.
So it indicated that you've been out there, and I used to live in that neighborhood, and I saw neighbors of mine that were there as well. So from that time, so I think, as you develop plans and so forth, I think it'll sort of naturally come to this committee to have discussions, and so we will surely be involved. And I think getting us involved at the very beginning is very helpful to what you want to do.
And I would say that we definitely expect to bring whatever that comes out of the event back to you, to be able to understand direction and taking it to the next step. I love this idea of having the sessions recorded, and maybe we can work with the Willamette Falls Community Channel, and I'll give them a call and see how that works, if they have something like that they can do.
And I assume the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association knows they've got a really good way of getting the word out to a lot of people. Right,
so we have been working closely with Denise, and I believe she's going to post the information about the event on the back of their card that they send out to all their neighbors announcing their meeting. That's this upcoming a week from today. And then I think that we're on the agenda for that meeting too. We're going to that meeting, and then we're also going to the Citizen Involvement Committee meeting that the city has to, again, kind of spread the word. We were at the meeting earlier this week for the Parks Foundation, and we sent the information out to them, and then hopefully also someone from there who's associated with the Artists Guild so we're trying to get the word out. But I also realize this is a lot for people to take in. It's really hard to schedule a weekend.
I would also urge you to maybe take a look at social media, whether it's Facebook or something like that. Okay. I'm pleasantly surprised. There's groups out there like Oregon City Chit Chat, and
that's right.
It's amazing watching the I'll call it chatter, but they really are interested in what's going in downtown Oregon City and what's going on in the community. It seems like there's a lot of passion around that.
So I've never used Oregon City Chit Chat. Is that
That's one of the Facebook groups.
Is that
out there,
a Facebook
local group?
Okay.
Yeah,
it is huge.
Is it? Okay.
It's huge.
Yeah, they post
the biggest.
everything in
is
everything.
it?
So
for the city.
some of it you have to take with a grain of salt, but but it's a highly used group. So that's just one avenue.
And I wonder if the city could publish something on the Facebook page there as well.
Yeah, we're working on that right now, getting it out, and we'll be posting probably a couple of times on our social media account, and it should be up on our website within the next day.
Great.
Any other questions?
And also, have you putting some flyers out at the library?
So I have one question. I was trying to describe this project to a coworker who is deeply involved in Boy Scouts, and my background was Boy Scouts, but I have 2 young girls. And in Boy Scouts, our service projects are much shorter even than Eagle Scout project. And so I couldn't describe to him, and I remember your first meetings a year and a half ago, and maybe it's been so long and it was described then, but I couldn't describe what this project, is there a particular series of projects within Girl Scouts that calls for this? What that original drive was? Or was it just a great motivation to do something?
Do you want to talk a little bit about the Silver Award?
We originally started this project to earn our silver award, and we did earn that, but we felt very passionate about this project, so we kept moving forward with it.
Great.
So with the Silver Award, it's a certain number of service hours that you put in on a particular project, which they were able to do by throwing that party and learning, and they had lots of opportunities, just like right now, to meet with groups and talk with groups. And I think ultimately the goal is to be able to get to something that they can build, because that's more tangible. But for me, I think it's very important, because Doug kind of knows that I work in transportation, not parks, but I work a lot with the community, and there's so much underlying what gets built, and so much engagement and so much groundwork that needs to happen. I think this is a great opportunity for these girls to really learn about that, and that's really a foundation for so much that we do. And I really also appreciated going to the Parks Foundation meeting and really understanding that each of us play an important role to kind of making things happen.
Oh, and it's exciting. Until this year, no groups had ever come to the Parks Department and tried to do things like this. And now this year, all in a year, there's 3 different groups. And it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, it is. I know, you went through the process last time of identifying things that were of interest to happen there. Are any of those going to be highlighted in this?
So I think what we'll be doing is we'll bring everything that we learned and have that there in the community room. So we basically have the community room for the weekend. So it'll be the starting place. You know, it's really themes that we learned. You know, people really talk. I think you might remember you put dots in between two. Do you want, kind of this play structure or more of a nature play? You know, are you more interested in a basketball court or a tennis court? And so you had dots along kind of a curriculum. So we'll start with that as ideas, and we also hope to, let's say if someone can only come for Friday night, that they have a place that they can share about their specific ideas on these other things that might happen later on the weekend, so that we can kind of keep building on what we learned.
It's great. It's very exciting. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Good,
And
thank you.
you'll hear from us again probably in January.
Very good.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to general business, and these will probably go fairly fast. The standing update usually entails kind of things that have changed or come up in the last 6 or 8 weeks, or between the last meeting.
So just a couple of items for general update as it relates to the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. As we sent out an email to the group for the stakeholders newsletter, which included some information on there, as well as a save the date. So we do have a public event coming up on November 17th, which is a design alternatives presentation / workshop. The 17th is the day. It will be at the Gregory Forum at the college. And then the timeline for right now is afternoon to evening hours. They do not have it finalized just yet, but they're looking at most likely having some interactive sessions, which will be somewhere in the hour-ish range, as well as having some tabling opportunities and some opportunities for folks to provide feedback, looking at some display boards. And again, it'll be providing design alternatives and getting feedback from the general community on what folks want to see at the Riverwalk for the Legacy Falls project. The planning group will also be coming to make a presentation at one of our upcoming PrAC meetings. So sometime either in December or January. We do not have a confirmed time for them just yet, but they were looking for a presentation sometime between when they do the public presentation in November and when they go back and start doing some of the more finalized preferred drawings sometime in February, March. So they're looking for some point, and I'll make that time available to them when we have that opportunity.
Okay, great. And the Clackamat boat ramp update. So I think several of us attended the public meeting, and then my understanding after that was the city commission basically had to tell the Marine Board, yes, we want to do it, but we don't have to decide exactly what we want to do yet. And I think that's where we're at now. So if you
Correct. So it is on the agenda for the work session for November 2nd. So the commission will be discussing whether or not they would like to support moving the boat ramp per the recommendation of the Marine Board.
Okay.
Did they need anything from us on that?
They will be provided information which states that you have approved moving the boat ramp to the preferred location. If you would be interested in coming and making comment on that, I'm sure that they would be open to hearing comments.
John,
Yes, sir.
excuse me, I missed the last meeting, so just a question. In the preferred design, are we still going to lose a lot of the park property?
So the key to the decision that's been made is there's zero preferred design.
There's no design yet.
The
Okay.
only thing that's been determined is the ramp would
The location?
literally just the ramp would move down. All ingress, egress,
Okay.
landscaping, none of that's been determined. And I think it was March or April was the deadline for that. and we were supposed to be clearly involved in those elements. It was really just the Marine Board, with the way the permitting piece started, they needed to have a yay or nay just to move forward. And that's what this is for.
Correct. Yeah, just the physical dock, the physical ramp, not the upland development.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I would say, though, that, and I'd encourage you to attend if you can some of these other meetings. It was quite an interesting meeting. There was a really good turnout. The room was mostly full, and there was a lot of information given. Some of it was very surprising to me, like how long it takes to do something like this compared to, and why it's here versus other places. And they answered those questions there as to, why it's not in the Willamette, for example, and some people had wanted that. And, it was much more in depth than what we saw probably 6 months ago. So park exclusion ordinance update, and that and the tobacco one kind of rolled together.
Yeah, so I can discuss both at the same time. So the both ordinance requests went to a work session for the commission on the 11th of October, and both passed a first reading on October 19th, and both items are on the scheduled agenda for a second reading for November 2nd.
Okay.
Any changes from our recommendation?
No, they went through per the recommendation. There was the exclusion ordinance passed 5-0. The tobacco ordinance passed 3-2. So there was definitely more discussion during the tobacco ordinance as opposed to the exclusion ordinance.
Were there concerns that those two had that our attendance at that November 2nd meeting would, is there a concern there that needs to be addressed?
I think there's always, if the PrAC committee feels strongly to make sure that your voice is heard in that forum, I would definitely recommend coming and making your presence known. The discussion points for the couple of commissioners that voted against it were for basically personal rights related,
okay,
as opposed to the public health and safety piece that the other commissioners voted yes for.
Okay, great. Thank you. PrAC work plan discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. That's this.
That's right. We can do it now.
I'll turn this over to Doug.
I'm not sure this is the PrAC work plan discussion. I think you were probably talking about that we had the Natural Resource Committee went through its work session,
but that's what
last
this is
night.
for, right?
Correct. So
Yeah.
the intent is to use, there was a suggestion to look at the Natural Resources Committee work plan and maybe use it as a template for the PrAC committee in putting forward our goals and objectives for the next year.
Our staff person, Pete Walter from planning, was very adept at typing. So this was actually produced as we were talking and so forth, which was helpful because we could see the outcome of some of the things we put forward. So it was a process. One of the things I wanted to point out was that we did suggest, as soon as I find it, there might be a reason for us to have a schedule, a joint session with you all to develop working relationships and possibly develop some budget support for joint projects. And that might be something that you want to consider. There are a few items there that are, I think, of joint interest to the groups. One, though I don't know if you have picked up on it, but a recommendation actually I put forward but had strong support was to have signage for improved pathways through parks that connected one major road to another. The Natural Resource Committee is also recommending signages for streams, and that's one of the things that will be put forward. Obviously, it requires budget money, but perhaps we're putting forward some priorities in terms of streams that should be considered. But a lot of people don't know some of those streams exist, or even if they know they exist, they don't know how extensive they are. One of the best examples is people know Coffee Creek. It goes over South End Road. It's a waterfall. And its actual origins are right next to Chapin Park, and it goes underneath Warner Parrott, I guess, is the road there, and so forth. That's not on our high priority list of streams getting named. The more major ones are, but there might be some interest in having some discussion of us going jointly with these ideas in terms of signage. There were other areas of common interest that we had, and as we got this, I just kind of checked off a few of them. There were probably more, but the cove development is an area of interest to us all. But for one thing, all that land around the cove that's in the urban renewal district will remain public land. So my hope is at one point it actually gets designated as a park, but that would be an area of interest jointly. The Heritage Tree Program, we haven't had that many people nominate heritage trees, but probably there'd be some benefit to actually recommending to the City Commission that certain trees in our park system be actually designated as heritage trees or not. On the Cove project, one thing that we've identified as an important item, and I don't know that we've had a speaker address it, but I don't I don't recall John Runyon coming to speak to this group. John Runyon's firm has been assigned identifying potential sites for mitigation for the harbor
Superfund.
Superfund.
Yeah.
Yeah, the harbor superfund. We went out on a visit. Some of the commissioners went, but I don't know if we informed you. You went, did you?
Yeah,
That's right.
I found out about it. Sure.
But the potential of that, particularly the peninsula and the West Bank being mitigation areas, the reason it would qualify is that it is in the tidal zone of the Willamette River, so the tide moves into that area, and it has potential for mitigation purposes for natural
Are
resources.
you too familiar with what he's talking about?
No.
Well, I was going to suggest we probably invite actually John Runyon to come to speak to us, but on the east bank and on the peninsula of the Cove, one of the requirements of the harbor superfund is to.
This is the Portland Harbor.
This is the Portland Harbor. Yeah, this is the Portland Harbor, the
Superfund.
Swan Island area, and so on. Is that there's so much industry built out there on the land that there's not much that they can do to mitigate, but other areas within the tidal region of Willamette River could serve as potential mitigation sites for natural resource mitigation for the loss of that area. It's separate from the actual dealing with the Superfund problem in the river. The mitigation lands are just another segment of it, but it's been identified as a potential site for that mitigation. The developer of Clackamas Cove is very interested in it and is interested in working to have that area as a natural area.
So essentially, is it just like a restoration of like natural habitat in lieu of what they can't do up in the Portland area?
That's what it is.
Gotcha.
Yes.
With funding from them, not from
yeah.
us.
Correct. Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
So those were, areas that popped up that I think might be of interest here, especially those that involve public lands. Mm-hmm. One of the other interests that we would jointly have is developing basically a pedestrian walkway from the area of the landfill, the the interpretive center all the way to the river, and possibly areas in the cove could be part of that area too. But that would be of interest, I'm sure. Anything that involves pedestrian and bicycle pathways through the city, I think, would be of interest to the parks.
Have you had a chance to walk through the culvert yet?
I have not had an opportunity, although I
okay.
have been brought up to speed a little bit on the Cove project.
The
culvert.
apparently
the
Union
culvert.
Pacific is and actually ODOT are opposed to the idea.
So Mike brought up the idea in an email to me about this document, about just showing it to the group, saying, look at the product they created and consider it. You know, 2 years ago we decided to adopt a biennial goal, and I think that was a really good thing. One, because we spend a lot of time creating the goals in January, February, and we don't adopt them until April, and then the year's half over. And so stretching it out a little bit, making it more significant, I think was a good improvement. And I think Mike and my question to the group really is this a route that we want to look at for next year? And I don't think we need to make that decision tonight, but take this home, look it over, and the next chair gets to handle that in January if we go forward with it. But it was a suggestion from Mike, and I asked Doug just to speak on it because he's on the committee who created this, or where this was created.
Right. The activities portion there, I chair that committee. The activities portion of the things that we are interested in, we try to tie them into the specific commission goals. So that's on the left, but it's the activities we propose there are the pieces for our goal setting session.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. We'll
Thank you.
move along to crack open positions. So I understand we have one application. Normally in December we have a work session where we do interviews, and that's probably the good jumping off point.
Correct. So we actually have 4
Great.
applications. And last we talked, we only did have one, so it was nice to see the other applications come in. So we do have 4 applications and 3 positions available going into January. 1 position that's vacant and two positions leaving. We could tie it into the December meeting and schedule a work session if it's of interest to the committee.
Now, anybody that can and wants to continue has to make an application. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, generally we do a December meeting, or excuse me, a December work session. In that meeting, then
Do
we
the
vote.
interviews.
Yeah, we do the interviews in the work session. Then we hold kind of a discussion during that meeting and vote to forward our recommendations onto the mayor. That way he has 1 or 2 meetings to approve, or 3 meetings to approve prior to the first January PrAC meeting. That way we can start off with full attendance. Everybody kind of agree with that? So I think that's what
So
we should
depending
do.
on how many applications we end up with, it'll depend on when we have to start the meeting.
Yeah, generally we can do 4 with a 6 o'clock start time generally.
And it is my understanding that the deadline has closed, so I believe that will be our pool.
Okay. Good deal.
John,
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming those of us who are graduating from the committee
Get a diploma.
will be involved in picking our successors?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank
You're a committee member till the end of the year, so absolutely.
All right, thank
We
you.
would love your input.
So we're looking at scheduling a 6 p.m. on December 1st for a work session with a 7 o'clock
Right.
regular session.
Right.
Perfect.
Yes.
And scheduling them at 15-minute intervals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So question, so the deadline to file the application is expired?
I can double check with the city recorder to see.
So I just came across it in my email, so I have not got mine in yet to
Okay.
reply. So
Okay. Yeah, I can.
I was thinking
confirm
the
with-
end of the month, end of October, but
Yeah.
I'm not positive. So
And I.
submit it.
Yeah.
Just get it in them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. definitely. For years, it was an automatic. There was no interview. If you wanted to renew, and there was no opposition, it was just kind of customary that, at least I think under Doug's term.
No, that's been changed.
Okay, it was Alice before you.
Oh, no, it's changed. No, during my time. Yeah.
Yeah. So and now it's changed, and the mayor generally now will want to show up and attend. So that'll
And
be something.
he has been invited. I
Okay.
guess he has a scheduling conflict on the 1st, but has committed to reviewing your recommendations as well as the tape from the day.
Great. And I also think there's been some discussion in the past. It's been customary to hold our public work sessions in the back room, and there's been some discussion that that's probably not the best place, that it should be done out here, so that will probably need to be moved.
They are open to the public, so
And which they were back there,
okay.
technically,
Yep.
but it was more of the technicality, or are they welcome to walk in? And I think that was the difference. So if the other committees are doing it out here, then that's where we should do it. And I don't know. Do you know if that's the case? Or other committees doing their interviews out here?
We've had our meetings out here.
Our interviews have always been back there.
The natural resources.
Oh, natural. I see what you're saying. Yeah, and I
that's
believe
who I'm talking about.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I believe that's the case for everybody. So if so, we should all prepare for that.
and I can get confirmation from the city recorder's office.
Okay. And other general business. Anybody with something new? Okay, I have one. I have a letter from Mike. He's in China, and he asked me to read this to everybody, so bear with me. Fellow PRAC members, sorry that I cannot be at tonight's meeting. Because of the length of time before our next meeting, I wanted to get an idea on your radar for you to think about, and hopefully we could consider in more detail at our next meeting if you're interested. As we have discussed, the Parks Day has not turned out the way we would have hoped. As far as bringing more awareness to than one of our parks, it's been a failure. At the same time, I see the city of Portland having great success with their Sunday Parkways program, where they close or restrict vehicle access to streets between several of their parks for biking and walking use that day. I think that this would be a tremendous program for our city and our Parks Department as a replacement for Parks Day. I think it would work very well to increase awareness of our parks. I have not discussed this with the Parks Foundation, but I am quite sure that the board would vote to be involved. The Trail Alliance, the Bike Concierge, the Transportation Advisory Committee, and First City Cycles would be perfect partners, along with Willamette Falls Hospital and other health-related organizations. This would not be an easy project, but I think we would have a lot of partners to pull it off. Thanks for listening, Mike. So, we have discussed the pros and cons of Parks Day, and I think it's about time that kind of come to a conclusion as to what we want to do next year. So let's have that on our agenda for the December meeting and kind of think about it. I thought this was a great letter, and when I met Phil the first time, I kind of gave him the history of those events and what transpired over this summer and that whole discussion, so it's real timely.
Sean, is Mike proposing shutting down the transportation within Oregon City? I didn't understand what.
I think. Well, I can't speak to the extent of the Portland program. My understanding it was very small areas, and you worked for City of Portland and know a lot about that.
So I was involved in the Sunday Parkways events, and they were run by the transportation department. And in partnership with many of the other organizations, both internally within the city and externally. Typically, there would be, 4 or so park locations, and then the corridors connecting those parks within the system. So I believe there were 4 or 5 overall, and they would rotate monthly from Southeast Portland, Northeast Portland, North Portland, Southwest, and each month would have a Sunday Parkways event where they would close streets. They'd set up booths. Parks would be activated with events, and it's a fantastic event, and they draw, I think, somewhere between 20,000 and 40,000 people each event. And obviously it could be scaled for our community, but definitely something to consider.
I just remembered the key thing that I never knew for years when we were doing Parks Day was what the original goal was. The very first goal, as it's been relayed to me, and I remember anyway, is he wanted to bring awareness to multiple parks in the same day. So what it turned out to be was we were having an event at one park and talking about other parks, but he wanted events throughout the park system in some way, simultaneously. Whether it be a scavenger hunt or multiple events that you could attend, one at 1 o'clock at this park and at 2 of the next, that would be to be determined. But it was to get you around and to participate in multiple events at multiple parks. So, anybody else?
Mike and I talked about this a little bit too,
Good.
and this sounds like a better way to go if we can organize something like this. I'm not familiar with the Portland event, so I don't know if anybody else is here.
I'm not either. I'm wondering if it's easy to maybe send out some links or even some old flyers, just kind of a little package of information that would kind of give us a history of that.
I can send out some links and some information to the group. It is a lot of coordination. The city of Portland, they have a couple different layers of folks that work on this. A lot of it is, finding volunteers when you're closing down roads. You need, for safety, you need folks at given intersections. There's training involved. There's, the police that are involved, obviously. And it does take a lot of communication and planning to pull off something like that. And, it's something where you have to have all your pieces lined up. So if that is of interest, I will send out some links to the group, which lays out the Portland Sunday Parkways, and it's done in communities, around the globe. And some of them are scaled down, so I'll try to find a couple of maybe comparable cities that do similar events and try to find some information for you as well.
Great. Thank you.
I'm wondering about partnerships of some sort. I mean, I'm trying to think of besides neighborhood associations. Who else would be?
TAC.
Well, and when I talked with Denise about it at the Parks Day in August, the thing that came to mind for me, if I was starting from scratch, and we can continue this discussion in December too, was, so let's say, for example, at one organization, pick a park, be it Ladderette Park, the Girl Scouts could be at that park with an event planned, and then somewhere down at John Storm Park, the Bicycle Transportation Alliance would pick that one, and it's logical the VFW would pick the Promenade since they're at the end of it, and you kind of have a sponsor for that event, and then come up with something that ties them together to get you to go to each of them.
Yeah, you could do something like geocaching or something like that.
Yeah, and then a prize at the end, be it something in the evening with downtown Oregon City has numerous concerts and events right in the middle of Main Street in the evening, and so maybe you tie it in with something even larger. Hold it the day of the Oregon Trail 5K, or I don't know, but it's interesting if you could get these different organizations to kind of sponsor Lions Club, Lions or Optimists, I think. That's kind of what I was thinking. If you get each of the charitable nonprofits.
Mm-hmm. Well, my question is, who's going to spearhead this? Is it PrAC or
So my thought was, I thought it would be just me, and this is my own thinking. Was I thought this would be a great place for the Parks Foundation to kick off.
Sure. That's what I'm getting at. It seems like we need to have some committee formed. Then, if it isn't going to be done through PrAC, then putting a group together somehow.
I thought I was thinking that if you pulled it away from PrAC and you had PrAC support, that's more logical when it comes to the financial side of putting on the event.
But it seems like it's going to be a city event.
True, but city events can Well, I mean, it could be, but who? So is but Portland's funding it with budget. That's where I think the difference in this one would be.
For instance, I know that just for instance, when the Park Foundation, we were trying to apply for a grant and to put a garden in the library and with some art, or base to build a base for art, we ran into the problem of, well, you need to go through the historical review board, and I guess we need people that know all the different issues that we're going to run into trying to do this. So
I'm sure we get cooperation with the city in order to of any of those issues, but you mentioned Transportation Advisory Committee would be probably somebody to work with too, but I think we need to be involved in that project from getting the support of the city to do it.
is there, since you have background with Portland Parks, is there somebody there that we could tap into to get some ideas from them?
Yeah, I can reach out. They have a manager that's responsible for the Sunday Parkways events within the transportation department, and they also have they have a lot of folks that are involved. It's definitely many different puzzle pieces to make it work. And I can tap into some of those resources, and if it is of interest to have if we develop a set of questions that we can send to them, that maybe give them some of the position of to respond, I guess. So I can put that together.
One of my concerns for this group and watching the past 3 or 4 years is the capacity out of this group meeting once a month and changing chairs annually. There's an ownership that I think really needs to be taken on this project, and I question whether PRAC is the one to spearhead it. And after sitting at Wesley Lynn Park last August, that's kind of what my conclusion was at the end is, and I think Mike is starting this out, and it's almost like, I'm not saying he's the one spearheading it, but he's kind of spearheading it, and I think he's got a great direction, and whether he's doing that as a PRAC member or a Parks Foundation member, I don't think that's even relevant, because I think one person, we just need that person, whether they're the chair or the vice chair or a member or just a citizen. Somebody needs to take ownership for this to be the success. And that's where in the past I think we've kind of faltered, all of us, I think, just because we kind of relied on staff to bring some stuff, and frankly, I showed up and I participated, but I didn't quite understand what the whole event was even about, even though I was a participant. And I think that's what Mike's asking is, let's review the whole thing. What's our real goal? What do we want to achieve? And so I think that it's a good thing to come back in December with kind of all these questions and maybe some solutions, maybe some other ideas. Yeah. Maybe his idea isn't the end result. Maybe this is just the kickoff point for what we make our own here in Oregon City.
Normally, I mean, there's a lot of things like this have a sponsor.
Yeah.
And if it's going to take a little money, it might be good if it was one of the groups in the city right now would be able to apply for a grant for it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I don't know if there's enough time to do that, but because most of the grants in January are going to be okayed in March or April, and I guess you'd have to assume you're getting the grant to be able to do it.
Right.
So
it's a good point, though.
But
You're
it,
right.
it seems like a worthy thing that
Yeah.
somebody would want to help you out with,
Right.
help whoever the entity is.
I agree.
I can just say that the thought of closing streets right now with that Fifth and Lynn closure right now,
Yeah.
that Molalla, that you can't even pull out onto Molalla from my neighborhood,
Yeah.
is just something hard for me to swallow right now. Coming down the hill, once I got out on Molalla, it was bumper to bumper cars all the way down Singer Hill, all the way up past Safeway. And I know it's just temporary. I'm not sure. I know it's going to be a couple weeks, though, for that sewer project. And so people are going to have to learn that there are other ways to get around. But I can see that, looking at a map and trying to find where those alternative pathways are between the parks through the neighborhoods and getting neighborhood buy-in.
It seems like, I know that we don't want to get into the details of this, but just throwing stuff out, if you had have different events happening in each park at a scheduled time, and then but you would have either a Clackamas Park or because that's kind of known as the park where everything, all the big events happen in town.
Or the end of the trail.
Well, yeah, the end of the trail too, of course. But so you would have, say, when I was a kid, 4th of July had the typical games you have, in the little races, you get awards, you can win prizes for and that sort of thing. You have that one park and just have different. Baseball could even happen. I don't know. So that it's a fun thing, and people that participate in different activities get to do their thing. Pickleball. It seems like they include all these different groups in to pull this off and showcase the parks, each park for what it is.
I agree.
Might be interested in involving the neighborhood associations in this discussion too. They're very active in terms of the parks in their areas. And anyway,
Definitely.
a lot to think about.
Shall we move on?
Move on.
All right. Member reports. Roger.
Okay, my normal source is off this week, but I did write down a few things that my observations, and that is that both parking lots are finished, and last time we met they were torn up, and let's see, classes are busy. It's very busy at the Pioneer Center, and fundraising is kind of started up, and they're selling boxes of chocolates and wreaths to raise money for the center, among other things. As far as the Oregon City Parks Foundation, I'll report that too. Our application for the HDR Water Board grant is still pending. We haven't heard anything yet, which I guess is good. And the other observation from a park, walking in a park, is that we have a few residents in Waterboard Park. I ran into, so unexpectedly. So that's all I have.
I have nothing to report.
I think most of you know that I chair the Great Oregon Watershed Council. There was a network of watershed councils that had a meeting and went into an area that I didn't even know existed. There's a creek that flows into Kellogg Creek that's located behind the swim center off of Harmony campus, and there's a watershed council that works specifically in that area, and they've done a lot of plannings and it's a rather extensive area, and they've had quite a bit of success for that volunteer organization that they are. I was trying to think of something specifically in our own parks program that occurred, but I couldn't quite do it, except as we walked to the library event and so forth, and seeing the playground equipment being utilized there. There was a lot of controversy, as people may recall, in terms of the playground equipment. A lot of use. I walked out on it, and I could tell if somebody falls off that slide, which is not as high as the original, they have a softer landing surface to come up on. But it was great to see that, and also to see the nice landscaping that's been started around the wading pool there.
I don't have anything to report tonight.
Well, I attended the grand opening for the library, and I saw a few people there Doug was there, and one of the distinguished representatives. And it was a great turnout, and I was amazed at least it seemed to me, how fast that project came alive from start to finish. Now, I'm sure Maureen didn't feel that way, but it sure looks nice. And the other, I wanted to comment to Denise on the monthly reports, and I'm always amazed at the activity that goes on that we can't see. The Meals on Wheels program is just absolutely amazing. You know, thousands of meals go out monthly to people, and the use of the swimming pool. It's just amazing what goes on, and I believe that most people don't recognize that. Anyway, I wanted to thank her for the good information and compliment her and all the staff that works on those things. My final comment has to do with the Dahl Memorial and how fast certain things can move. We started talking about the Medal of Honor thing, and it seemed like nothing happened, and all of a sudden, bingo, we have a brand new location. We have 11 Medal of Honor winners that most of us didn't know much about or anything about, and a celebration coming up on November the 9th. So those are my comments.
And I don't have anything in particular other than some questions as we go forward. One thing that PRAC needs some feedback on is the grant denial for Glen Oak Park and next steps. So maybe next month, or you're welcome to address
yes,
them
I
now.
can. I can speak to that just a little bit now. I did have a meeting with the landscape architect for the master planning process, who was also involved in the grant presentation to the Oregon State Parks system, and he provided me with the comment forms for the review process from the evaluation committee. So I do have that document. It's not very thorough, but it does, he did give me some feedback on next steps and maybe some ways that we can change the proposal in order to be a little bit more competitive in the process next time.
Okay.
So yeah, we can add that as a discussion point, and I can provide you with that documentation.
Great, thank you. Okay, and then staff reports. So the rest is all you.
Yeah, so the recreation update went out via email, which we already discussed. So I'll move on to the Charter Park update. We do have the Charter Park discussion going before the City Commission for a work session discussion topic on November 16th, and then possibly going before the City Commission during a regular session sometime in December. So I'll keep you updated on that. Unless there's any other questions, we can move on to the...
Everybody familiar with what that is?
The Charter Park.
So my understanding, and I'll take the first shot of it, is there's certain parks that were never actually designated as official charter parks. And so this is kind of coming back around and cleaning up the books on every park. You remember Oregon City's got a rule, or is it a rule? Ordinance, thank you, that you can't sell parkland without a vote of the people. So what if you build a park and you never designated it as a park? Those sorts of questions come into play. And so this is kind of fixing up that over the years.
Correct, yeah. And there were only, I guess, a handful of parks that were designated in that regard as a charter park. So we had to, working with our GIS department and with our legal counsel, going through and determining, the exact boundaries of each of the park properties, official legal language of those deeds, determining if there was ever any designation at any point since the city's inception, and then determining which facilities we needed to then change over from, city property to officially a charter park property within the system. So that'll go before the commission during a work session in November.
Thank you.
And that's huge.
Yeah,
You know, it was an oversight for way too long. So.
Right. Well, and I think so I have asked staff in the past, for example, when Wesley Lynn was dedicated, you know, had it been made an official park, and I think it was a staff decision that, well, it was more of it's kind of obvious it's a park now. And so we just moved along, and so I think this is a really positive thing because it kind of locks things in the way most citizens thought they were in the first place.
Yeah. My understanding, when this issue came up before Ed Sullivan, our attorney at the time, city attorney at the time, he said any park created by ordinance is essentially covered, even though it wasn't specifically designated as a charter park. And it really, in some sense, it ties the city up because you have all these pocket parks that Dement is the greatest example. It's just an empty lot and nothing more than that. But we tried to have it go to a vote of the people, and it failed. Probably the mistake was we put all those small parks to a vote of the people, and probably somebody in every neighborhood identified with them, so they blocked out. But there are some parks I think that are questionable. Dement is the one that always comes up because it doesn't have anything except grass, but I don't know if in that process you'd be able to pull parks off of the list. That might be more that's proved to be challenging.
Correct. I believe once it is designated as a charter park, it does make it more limited to do other to use the property for other uses, which would include selling the property or putting non-park related items on those properties.
So let's move on to future agenda items. Does anybody have any?
After we go through our goal setting process, whether there be an interest to go ahead and pull both natural resource and Parks and Recreation together for a joint meeting.
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about that before, and we've never done it. I think let's look towards next spring, maybe a March or April meeting, and just kind of even pencil it in as tentative. I think we'd need some goals for that meeting. Like the last one, we had a joint Parks and Library Board meeting, but the goal was very clear.
Yeah. Yes.
So, but I agree.
Okay.
That's something definitely look forward to next spring. I'm concerned personally that we aren't making enough progress on Glen Oak and on Filbert Run, and so I think it's good to keep those kind of in the forefront. And so in the next couple months, if we could kind of have just an overview of where we are again with those. And if you want to tie it, I mean, we've already got the question out there on the Glen Oak, but if you kind of tie those two things together, I think there's a bigger picture there, and they're always at the top of our priority list, but we haven't discussed them really in months. So there's people out there wondering why the blackberries are still 10 feet high at Glen Oak, and neighbors that still want something improved at Filbert Run. So.
Also, kind of toward that end, also being fairly new to the city and new on the committee, one thing I would really appreciate seeing is what is the master plan for the city and future maybe urban growth boundaries and park plans and things like that. I haven't been privy to that yet, and helping or seeing that would really help me on this committee.
Yeah, so the park master plan it's on the
yeah, Scott was supposed to send that to me.
Okay, it's on the website.
Okay.
Because there's been a couple times just in the last 6 months I've questioned something,
Mm-hmm.
and you can pull down the whole PDF on it's in the Parks Department's section. I think at the bottom, although the website's changed around a little bit.
Yeah,
so
I can send you
Up
an
to
email
date?
with it.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's up to date.
Well, since the last.
Since the last
I think it's
planning, yeah.
2008 was when we renewed it, or Is that right? Okay.
It was
There
2008.
might be a benefit of looking at that because we have these three master planned areas: Beaver Creek, Park Place, and South End, and perhaps to review that in terms of what the park systems in those new areas are going to be.
Yeah, and I can't remember at all what it spells out. I'm sure they're in there in some.
I would hope
I
so.
know on
and that-
South End,
But I'm not sure.
it's pretty well defined. The Beaver Creek master plan, because a lot of it's industrial, there wouldn't be the parks, but I know that there was something in that plan too.
I might suggest maybe we invite somebody from planning
Yep.
to one of the upcoming PRAC meetings to discuss the concept plans for those areas
Yeah.
and how it relates to Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, let's look at that at like a January or February. I think January usually gets really tied up, but February would. And then the final thing, which isn't, well, it will be an agenda item, is we need to consider chair and a vice chair election in January. And we can do nominations then, but we can also throw out names and ideas in December. I think that's how we did it last year. So that's our next meeting.
And I brought it up, inviting maybe jointly the developer and then the person, John Runyon, who's looking at the mitigation site there on the Cove. He's,
A cove field trip.
Yeah.
Late spring.
yeah,
Well, and the code developer has presented before PRAC before, but it's been 10 years.
yes, it has. There are similarities, but
But a lot of differences.
yes, yeah.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Good to the order? All right. Next meeting is, excuse me, would have been Thanksgiving, so we usually bump it to the following Thursday into December. So it's December 1st. Everybody good with that?
And there'll be a work session.
And there'll be a work session, I would anticipate 6 p.m.
Okay.
In this room.
in this room. Usually the department springs for a little food.
Refreshments.
Okay.
We can take care of that.
All right.
Important stuff.
All right. All right. See y'all on December 1st. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.